Hello, everybody. Welcome to the RSL Awards 2023 webinar, which is basically outlining the exam options that you have available, both for classical musicians and contemporary musicians. And we're delighted to be running this in association with Omagh Music Academy, which is one of our public exam centres in Northern Ireland. Claire Bowes is on the line and is available to take any questions specifically about how things operate within Omagh specifically. Purpose of this webinar will be to take you through the different exam options across the primarily our Rockschool and RSL Classical brands. So to put that into context for you, you may be very familiar with RSL Awards, you may not at all. At any point, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, or indeed you can request to raise your hand, and then we will be able to take questions live as well. But we'll do that towards the end of the session. But as you can see, RSL Awards, who started life in 1991, has over that time expanded enormously from just delivering rock school exams for guitar, bass and drums. These are grade exams that run from Premier all the way through to grade 8, to a wide range of instruments, so drums, acoustic and electric guitar, bass guitar, ukulele, piano, keyboard, vocals, theory, classical violin and classical piano and classical guitar. So these are the two brands that sit here, and they very much function as our graded exam space. We also have graded exams for students working in groups, but they're individually assessed within performing arts. So that's musical theatre, street dance and jazz dance. And then you have the options for individual and duos and threes for acting, screen acting and public speaking. And then moving over to the green square, this is the vocational qualifications. These are alternatives to GCSE and A-level in England, and online, where students can follow a slightly more practical pathway across performance, business, composition, music technology, creative performing arts, digital media, what it's like to work as a portfolio musician. There's gaming, there's creative art and design. So there's a whole range of different units that can be put together to create this very, very interesting curriculum opportunity. And then we have our creative qualifications, which are graded exams in podcasting and blogging. These, again, run from Premier to grade 8, but instead of a practical exam, it's a case of putting together a creative task, a creative composition task, which is uploaded and then assessed by our examiners. Music production functions in a similar way. It's a creative composition task, and then there's a downloaded exam which makes up the other 40%. And then the other very interesting thing that we're doing, which will work very, very well in contexts such as Omagh Music Academy, are our group performance assessments, which are exams for students working in whole groups. And they're also working in smaller groups where they get either an award based on how well they performed as a whole group, or they can have an individual award. And these are at level 1, 2 and 3, which map across to the regulatory qualifications framework. So it's basically for beginners, intermediate and advanced students. All of that, to put it in context, puts RSL in a relatively unique position where we are occupying the creative space both in the curriculum and in the extracurricular context. So when you are working with an organisation such as Omagh Music Academy, they'll have an awareness of how the work they're doing sort of outside the school space is actually supporting what goes into the school. So they may start in one location and then they'll start to expand, and it will feed into what they're doing elsewhere. We know that the majority of students engage with music either independently or outside the classroom. So to be able to offer qualification assessment routes through that and through them attending a music school is a really sort of valuable part of the student's life. We take a holistic approach to our exams. We don't believe that starting the top left and being able to play a piece all the way through to the bottom right-hand corner necessarily gives them the full experience of being a musician. So everything we've done is designed to cater for that. And you'll see through the way we've structured our exams that you'll see how that works. But this gives you a broad overview of how there are sections that support composition. There are sections that really focus on instrument-specific skills, developing listening, and crucially as well is their conceptual understanding of the piece of music they're playing. What were the composer's intentions? What were they trying to do? How does the individual performer put that across, and how does that develop their ability to expand their own sort of musical horizons and their own musicianship in general? This is reflected in the exam report that they get. Now, this is consistent for both contemporary and classical, where they are assessed against 4 different areas: command of instrument, syncope pulse, accuracy and understanding, style and expression. We recognize that having a good technique is important, but the technique needs to be sufficiently good to produce a good sound and to produce good tone quality. Doesn't necessarily mean that the technique is going to be exactly the same as one an examiner grew up with, or indeed a technique that you yourself as a teacher would have. The student will be able to work out the best way to produce a good sound, and they will get credit for that. The syncope pulse is very much about having a good sense of internalized pulse. With some of our qualifications, I'll explain more about that later. There are exams that don't have a backing track, so they're tracks that don't have a backing track, and there are other pieces that do have a backing track, because we recognize that in some contexts students needing to be able to perform to a backing track is important. For example, if they're a session musician, or if they are laying down the track for for a friend in the recording studio. Equally, being able to play along to a live accompaniment is obviously important, both when they're working with one other individual, or indeed if they're working as part of a wider ensemble. I'm going to jump down now to style and expression. The style and expression is baked in from the very beginning. And this is because, as I said before, we want to make sure that students, when they're first looking at a piece of music, they think about what that piece of music is for. Who are they presenting it to? What sort of things are they presenting, and how are they going to do that? That becomes increasingly sophisticated as you go through the grades, obviously. But obviously that varies slightly depending on the style of music. Is it a classical style? Is it a jazz style? Is it a pop style? Is it a rock style? Is it all these different styles in the middle? And actually, if you take a genre agnostic approach to musical learning, it's about looking at the piece of music and what is it that fundamentally makes it sound good and is going to communicate something effectively. That's what we're looking for. And within that, the accuracy and understanding of the notation is really quite important. You don't need to, well, it is, we very carefully arrange every piece of music that fits in our syllabuses and our repertoire to make sure that the music is accurately benchmarked for the ability level of the student, and that it is going to accurately represent what the composer wanted to do. If a musician is looking at that piece of music and there is a bar or a couple of bars or some phrases where they want to deviate a little bit from what is written, because it's going to make more musical sense for them, it's going to help them present their style more effectively, then that is something that is going to be acceptable by an examiner within reason. The examiner will obviously conversely look and make a judgment as to whether they've done that because actually they've simplified the piece a little bit too far, in which case they will obviously lose marks for doing that. But all of this really is to flag this idea that that you can use a lot of different styles of music to curate your exam in a way that is going to accurately reflect the sort of musician that you are as a student. And you might be a specialist, or you might be a generalist, and you might be drawing on resources from lots of different places. And I know Claire is very keen to sort of advocate for that approach with her academy, and I'm sure she can talk about that sort of later on. Just to finish off on this section about the assessment, you can see here that there are 4 different criteria clearly laid out for each of the pieces, and then the student sees whether they got a pass or merit distinction based on the numerical score that the teacher gives them, and then you can see the mark out of 20, so the examiner gives them. That means that students can very quickly see where they perform really well and where they can improve. And the comments are very tightly focused to do the same thing. So what went well this time? What would be the things to focus on for next time? In the context of a performance certificate, it is perfectly possible to assess the technical facility of a student through how they're performing pieces, because if you are playing, a couple of bars or a particular phrase that is built around a scale or an arpeggio, the student will need to be able to demonstrate sufficient technical skill to be able to play that. So we have always enabled the performance certificate to be an option. You can see there we've got the graded music exam, which is how you'd expect it to look, and you can see that we've always got the choice between sight reading or improvisation. So again, students can choose which area they want to focus on, and that again removes some barriers that students might find challenging, and helps them to focus in the areas that they want to. You can see as well that we've talked about free choice pieces. So this means that you can actually put together an exam where 3 pieces are from elsewhere. Everything you need to prepare for an exam is contained within the grade book that we put. So for example, grade 3 classical piano, there are 10 tracks to choose from. Some of those pieces are solo piano. Some of those pieces do have some backing tracks in there as well, depending on the style they're written in. But you could, within the context of a classical piano exam, you could take up to 3 pieces from the contemporary piano exam with Rockschool. You could take 1 piece from the classical piano, 2 pieces from the classical piano syllabus. You could take 1 piece from the contemporary piano syllabus, and you could take 2 pieces from elsewhere to curate your exam. And that works for the graded music exam as well. So we've made sure that where we've got a classical syllabus with classical piano and classical guitar, that it talks to our contemporary syllabus, so acoustic guitar and classical guitar work closely together to make sure that irrespective of what style the student is performing in, they're able to demonstrate the standard of the appropriate grade. And we want students to be able to curate their own exam that is focusing on their own particular areas of interest and expertise. I'm going to explore a little bit more about that in a second, but I just want to talk about the exam options, because it is possible, and indeed during COVID, lots of people did do recorded video exams, where you can submit a continuous unedited recording of your digital exam, of your performance certificate or your graded exam through to us, and we will mark it externally and we'll give you feedback. A nice little part of that is that when you're given feedback, you're given verbal feedback through a piece to camera by the examiner as well. So the candidate can always see who has actually assessed their work, so it doesn't become this completely isolated process. Omagh Music Academy function as a public exam centre, which means that students at the academy and from outside the academy can come in and they can take their exam in a face-to-face environment, where we will have an examiner in a room assessing those students. Those students can be playing a wide range of instruments, and they can be coming in from a classical perspective or a contemporary perspective, or of course something that is between the two. These are our exam centres in Northern Ireland. So you can see Omagh is the exam centre of choice for that particular area, and here is when the exams run. So these are our exam periods throughout the year, and you can see that currently we've got a closing date of the 13th of February, and the exam period runs from the 20th of February to the 16th of April. So the Omagh Music Academy exam updates are within that window. And then again, they'll run again in the summer, and they'll run again in the autumn. As an individual teacher, you can join our free teacher registry. It's absolutely costs nothing at all. You simply spend a few minutes filling in your details, put up a profile picture, we then approve it, and then it goes live. So anybody looking to get tuition can actually go onto the teacher registry, and they can find you and get in contact with you directly. It also opens up a huge amount of free resource for you, which I, again, will talk about in a minute or two. If you're not quite sure where things work for you with Rockschool and RSL Classical, you can download these sample packs, and these sample packs give you not only an example of a piece at each grade all the way through from Premier to grade 8, but it also gives you the benchmarking criteria that was used to pull these pieces together. So in this context, you'll be able to look at a piece from elsewhere and decide at what level it sits. You can also very quickly look at the sort of benchmarking criteria and see where your individual students fit within that context. And you can also see how the classical syllabuses talk to the contemporary syllabuses, and indeed how our syllabuses talk to things like GCSE specifications as well. So it's a really useful way of using these resources in lots of different contexts, as well as giving you an understanding of kind of where things sit and how things work together. We've also got two sets of digital resources. One is our learning platform and one is Replay. I will give you a quick overview of the learning platform shortly, but I think the thing to note about the learning platform is that it gives you free access to all of our content across every single repertoire that we do. And if you have a teacher registry profile, you as a teacher get free access to that. If you're looking at doing things in a school context, or you want to just have one track accessed digitally, that will come with a similar interactive sheet music player called Replay. And that, as I said, comes free when you buy a digital version of the book. I want to, before I demonstrate the learning platform, just take a moment to highlight why RSL Awards is a particularly good option, and why engaging with RSL Awards and working with Omagh Music Academy as a public exam centre is particularly valuable. Because we do group performance assessments as well as individual assessments, it means that we can assess students in a whole range of different contexts. And actually, you can have a group of students pulling together a group performance assessment, and they can come along and do their exam as part of an exam day. We also make sure that we develop skills and knowledge which underpin all modes of learning in music and performing arts. And we look very carefully to diversify the traditional offer. So within our classical piano syllabus, our classical violin syllabus, our classical guitar syllabus, and indeed every syllabus we've released since 2019, we've had a very clear focus on making sure that the pieces of music cover representative styles, so classical crossover, jazz, 21st century writing, minimalism, world music, folk music, etc., etc. We've also made sure that we've got composers with a wide range of cultural backgrounds, and we've got male and female composers included. So we want to make sure that students can look at something that we've produced and go, that represents me. I'm very, very keen to move forward and engage with this particular repertoire, as well as looking at repertoire that is of a similar a similar style, for example. We have lots of different options in terms of taking the exams and the type of exam that you can do, which means there should be something that is going to cater for individual students. And we have a online booking system that is second to none, actually, in terms of how you can enter your students for exams to Omagh, etc. You as a teacher can enter exams this way. Individual students can enter for exams. Individual parents can enter for exams, and you can book multiple candidates at the same time. We've also got a really good system for uploading recorded work, because we've had that sort of in place ever since we brought out vocational qualifications sort of 20 years ago. So we've just expanded that. And I've talked about the repertoire and resources. So I'm going to just take a little bit of time now to talk about that. I'll stop sharing my screen and load it up, and you can have a look, and then I'll leave the contact details for you to have a look at in a second here. Let me just load it up, and I will share my screen again. There we go. Let's have a look. I share my screen already. There we go. So here you can see when you log into rslawards.com, and you'll have a cloud account, there is a button that says access a learning platform, and you get this dashboard. And you can see here that you've got all of the repertoire contained. So if I just pick, I'm going to pick acoustic debut, and you can see here all the different tracks. In the early grades, there are candidate and duet parts. So that means that you can perform live with your teacher. This within the classical violin and classical guitar, you also get a similar sort of thing going on. And we've also made sure that with classical violin that you can download the accompaniment live, the piano accompaniment, but you can also download a backing track. So you've got those two different options. If I look at Ain't No Sunshine here, you can see that you've got everything in the book, and you can play along the backing track, the demo audio with the click track. You can have a scrolling view. You can also mark up different sections. It's a video version. If you want to record yourself playing to demonstrate particular techniques to the students, you can do that as well. If I do this here, you can mark up sections. So you could just get the student to practice playing those first 4 bars with a nice slow tempo over and over again until they've got it absolutely locked in. So I can play you an example of that just now. Here we go. Let's just move this up. Okay. And if we go back to this section as well, you can see that there are additional exercises that you can do to support. So you could, for example, create your own exercise, either from an audio only perspective, so you can record one or you can import one. You can also import scores from elsewhere. So if you want to give students access to additional things, you can do so, all held within the learning platform. You can also do online remote live lessons using the learning platform, and it is possible for individual students to obtain a subscription, which is £4.99 a month. They then find you on the learning platform, and then they end up with access to all the content as well, and they connect to you, and you and they can interact through the learning platform. So when you set a task for them to do, you can click a button and it sends it across to them, and it automatically gives them an indication that their work, that they've got some work to do during the lessons. And there's even a way of looking at your students and identifying how many times they've accessed the learning platform in any one week. So you can actually monitor their progress and their practice between lessons, which is a really lovely extra tool. So as I said, that is completely free of charge for any teacher. So please do feel free to set up a teacher registry profile, and you can make use of that in your teaching practice. So that is the end of the presentation as it stands. I am very happy now to answer any questions. I'm just going to unmute Claire now, if that's okay. And Claire, could you just give a bit of a context as to who Omagh Music Academy are and why working with Rockschool is sort of quite important for you?
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Very well, thank you, Claire. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah. So we, I suppose Omagh Music Academy offers lessons to people of all ages and abilities in Omagh. And we, I suppose, with exams, have been looking for the right fit for our students, which is where RSL came in, because we like to give our students variety. And we like them to play to their strengths, and we feel that through RSL they can get that mix, and are able to still achieve exams without sort of the constraints that some other exam boards maybe have. So I know for a lot of our students, like things like improvising and even playing with others and accompanying and things like that are all important to them. It's more about learning to become a musician rather than an instrumentalist. And RSL allows for that flexibility. So we're quite keen to start using more of RSL's exam processes, and we're excited to work alongside RSL.
Good, thank you, Claire. And in terms of say working with piano students, do you find that they're particularly wedded to a particular style of music, or are they quite keen to kind of explore lots of different styles in their learning?
They're quite keen to explore different styles, and even what we find is that they don't realize that they're keen to explore different styles until they're introduced to the various styles and things that are available. Plus, I do think as a teacher, it's really important to give them that variety as well, so that they're not just like, even if they are into pop music, I think it's good to sort of give them that insight into the classical genre and stuff as well. Plus also showing them how the basis of even pop music can be found in classical music through like chord progressions and things like that. So I think it's really useful for them to have that whole caveat of genres.
Mm. And if you were if you're going to talk to somebody from from your area that sort of never approached doing the rock school exam before, what would be your, this may be an unfair question, but what would be the advice that you would give to them?
I don't know. I suppose I'm not the best to give advice. The advice I would give is to contact yourselves with any questions, because I know like you've all been so helpful in any questions that I have had, and even having that given me that bit of knowledge and understanding, even in terms of being able to choose pieces from other genres and things to, so that students are having that variety in their exam, and things like that. So yeah, what I would say is if you're in need of any advice at all, get in touch with Rock School, because they will do what they can to help.
Great, thank you, Claire. And I'm not sure if any of our participants today have any particular questions they want to ask, but what I can say is that this webinar has been recorded, and it will be posted up online within the next sort of 2 to 3 days, so you can come back and look at it again, look at each of the slides in a little bit more detail, and then have a look on our website, which has got specific pages linked to each instrument, and you can go through that and you can look at each grade in turn, you can look at each of the content in turn, and as I said, you can download the sample packs that have a really good look and a listen to all the things that we that are contained within those particular syllabuses. We're very, very keen to have feedback on things that are particularly good, and also things that will help to develop things in the future, including suggestions for resources and support materials that will help you as you're engaging with our stuff, and likewise for individual students as they're engaging with their stuff as well. So thank you very, very much today. Thank you, Claire, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure as ever, and we look forward to seeing you again in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you.